Hi, I'm Janet. This lesson is about clauses. A clause is a group of words that generally consist of a subject, a verb phrase, and constituents of a complete thought. A phrase, on the other hand, is a group of words that does not contain a verb and its subject. A clause may or may not express a complete thought. For example, in sentences, they were allowed to go to class although they had not cleared their school fees. In this sentence, they were allowed to go to class. It's a sentence that makes a complete thought, and so we may call it the main clause or the independent clause. And although they had not cleared their school fees, does not make sense on its own, and so we call it the dependent clause. Now another example is the television reported. This example does not make sense on its own without another clause or another sentence, and therefore this is what we call the dependent clause or the subordinate clause. We have the newspaper or the television as our subject and our verb as reported, and so it is a sentence that does not make sense on its own, and so we may call it the dependent clause. Now let us look at the types of clauses. We have the independent clause or the main clause. We have the subordinate, what we call the dependent clause, the relative adjective clauses, noun clauses, conditional clauses. In this lesson, we begin by looking at the independent or the main clause. And this type of clause expresses a complete idea or thought, and therefore can stand by itself in a sentence, and it can make sense on its own. Independent clause is used when such a clause is joined with another clause. Example, my uncle sent me to school. Example A is a sentence that is making complete thought on its own. It can stand on its own, and therefore it is an independent clause. Since I was an orphan, my uncle sent me to school. Now, my uncle sent me to school is an independent clause. It can stand on its own, and therefore, even without this other part, since I was an orphan, an independent clause can be joined with another independent clause to form a compound sentence. Let us consider these examples. My uncle sent me to school and I passed my exam. My uncle sent me to school is an independent clause. It makes sense on its own without I passed my exam, and therefore it is an independent clause. I passed my exam again makes sense on its own. It's another independent clause. And so when we join this and this, we form a compound sentence joined together by the word and. We arrived to school early, but the gate was closed. In this example, we arrived to school early makes sense on its own, can stand on their own. The gate was closed, again, is a complete thought, it's a complete sentence, and so it forms an independent clause. And so this part joined to this part, or this clause, independent clause, joined to this independent clause by the use of the word but, makes a compound sentence. That is it for this lesson. I hope this helps you to improve on your English. Kindly remember to like, to share, and to subscribe to this channel. See you in the next one.